Cripple of Inishmaan is a play written by Martin McDonagh, set on the island off the west coast of Ireland called Inishmaan. It's about a boy named Billy Clavin who has a physical deformity from birth and has been given the nickname of Cripple Billy. He's a bright, intuitive kid who's surrounded by people who aren't really, and he longs for a different life, a better life. He hears about an American filmmaker who comes to the neighboring island of Inishmaan, who's going to be shooting a movie, and hopes that this movie might be his way off the island. So he goes and tries to get in the movie, ends up going back to America, and isn't as successful as he hopes. And we get to see kind of the result of that for him as well as for the people that he lives with on Inishmaan. Cripple Billy's, he is the smart kid stuck in a class full of average kids. He dreams of a bigger life, and yet he is surrounded by people who don't. He's a sensitive, smart kid surrounded by people who mainly are a little edgy and mean. He gets made fun of for reading a book, and in fact at one point the guy goes, well, you could throw the book at a cow, Babby Bobby's idea of entertainment, and Billy says, I'd rather read the book, and Babby Bobby goes, well, it takes all sorts, I guess. Like, I guess there's some people who would rather read a book than throw it at a cow. So he feels a little trapped in his life. Helen's an island girl who is brash. She's aggressive. She's edgy. She's tough. Probably one of the things that Billy is attracted to, her physical toughness. And she's a bit of a, she's kind of open, so she doesn't mind kind of kissing boys, and that's Billy's real, kind of the one connection to the island that when he leaves for Hollywood, it's the one thing that he misses. And at the end, he's trying to see if she might make a go with him. Aunt Kate and Aunt Eileen raised Billy. They call him his foster aunties. There's no real indication of whether that was just somebody, their neighbors or friends of the family, but these two older women raise Cripple Billy as their own virtually from birth, because Billy's parents went and tried to kill Cripple Billy when he was a baby because of his physical deformities. He is the most youthful and probably energetic, even though Johnny Patine Mike probably gives him a little bit of a run for his money, or can, depending on the portrayal of him. Bartley's a little, he's 16, but probably in the 1930s on an island that might gear down to about our 12-year-old. He loves candy. He loves to laugh and joke with his sister. He's kind of immature and a fun little character. Johnny Patine is a town gossip or a newsman. He makes his living by delivering the news to the people of the island, and he'll come in and tell you news, and you owe him something in return. So he keeps popping into this show as the guy who kind of keeps everybody informed of what's going on, and he's a little more than a gossip. He brings news like there's a sheep with no ears. He tells them about a goose that bit a cat. But he's also the guy that brings the news of Robert Flaherty, the filmmaker from America, which changes everything for everybody. So he is integral, plays an integral role in the plot. He's also not portrayed as the nicest of guys. He's trying to kill his mother by having her drink herself to death. He, being the gossip, will tell everybody's news. So he seems kind of like a not the nicest guy in the world. And it's an interesting twist towards the end. Babby Bobby Bennett is a local guy, an islander who has a boat. He is probably the most physically violent character. Obviously, there's a scene where that holds true. But the thing about this play is that all of the characters are pretty toughened by the world in which they live. The humor, which is aggressive and mean in this play, we discussed as a cast that it kind of has to be because these people are tough and a little insult doesn't affect them at all. So subtlety is lost in this world because they live on a barren island, a bare rock. So everybody is just a little tougher. So Babby Bobby is probably a fairly normal guy if he were living in a fairly normal circumstance. But one of the things that we talked about people on this island is they don't like to be messed around with. Don't take away, don't disrespect me, I guess, in our lingo today. And Billy does that to Babby Bobby, kind of tricks him, and when Babby finds out, he's not happy about it. We had a short rehearsal thing of time for this production, so some of my actors luckily have had some voice classes where they've worked with dialect acquisition. And you were in the class where we talked about how to simulate a dialect. There are language tapes that we use. There are also websites. There's a great website for dialects that theater people use a lot. And in fact, that site had an Irish woman on it who was being recorded saying a lot of the local vernacular that may be unfamiliar to us. So she would tell us, with an Irish person's perspective, how to say Johnny Patin like. And we would listen to that and go, oh, you're not saying that correctly. So just a lot of kind of your substitutions. In a dialect, you substitute this sound in the American for this sound in the Irish. You work on the way that they use their mouths, and we worked on the muscularity. Luckily, because of some of their backgrounds, we didn't spend a whole lot of time specifically doing dialect. Just in rehearsals, when I would hear a couple of the actors, they change their A's in ways that aren't right for Irish. They go, ah, I'm gonna ask you something, which is not really as good. The ah sound isn't really that indicative of the Irish dialect. So we would make notes. This sounds like you're doing British, or this sounds too American, and look for consistency first for them, and then try to tweak to make it. I don't think we'd fool an Irish person yet, but it's a good, pretty consistent dialect for that. The hardest part, I think, for us, might just be that there are so many little things that we had to be aware of. This is because of the dialect play. It's one extra thing. It's not the hardest. I think really the hardest thing for us as a cast was understanding how saying things that we would feel guilty saying to people didn't have that reaction to them. They probably didn't feel as mean as we do. They probably weren't intending to be as mean as we would feel. And so there's this fairly large disconnect between somebody today who understands psychological development and political correctness and be nice to everybody as we're taught growing up, saying things like, well, you're a funny-looking cripple boy, right to a boy with a physical deformity. We are appalled or offended, and we don't, the cast doesn't really behave that way. So to understand, I think we judge them too quickly, that they're just mean people. And so that disconnect between that world and our world. And we talked about how when you live a tough life, you get toughened, and therefore, if I'm trying to jab you just a little bit, it has to be a bigger jab. It's kind of like if you're scolding a horse, patting him on the bottom doesn't get his attention. He's a big, strong, tough animal. But patting a little cat, a little tap might make a difference. So these characters, their psychological makeup is that they're the big horse. So if I'm trying to affect you at all, I've got to just whack you. And that seems really odd to us as a modern audience.